So good afternoon. I welcome all my colleagues who are joining us today in the webinar on e-waste management, challenges and agenda. I also welcome colleagues who are joining us on live streaming in all the social media platforms. We have received near about 500 registrations from a very diverse sector audience for this event, which goes on saying how important an issue this is in the current context. I am Atin Biswas. I work with the Municipal Solid Waste Management team at the Center for Science and Environment. And we are organizing this public webinar on a very relevant, critical, and contemporary topic, which is even more relevant considering the rate at which e-waste has grown over the years. The United Nations has termed this growth as tsunami. So e-waste is most precious of all waste streams as it contains rare metals and materials. But inappropriate handling of e-waste could expose the handlers to extreme health risks as well. How are we placed today to deal with the tsunami is a question that we need to find an answer to. So from collection to transportation, from domestic production to import, from producer to consumer and the rest of the value chain, from policy to practice, all these issues needs to be introspected by all the stakeholders to look for an improved system to deal with the current challenges. We will contemplate all these questions today in the discussion that we are going to have. We in CSC dived deep into the issue of e-waste management and documented our findings in the report titled e-waste management challenges and agenda, which we are going to release officially today. And we are definitely going to engage further with all concerned to influence the current policy and practice. The report is available in our website, and I shall provide the download link in the chat box for all of you, those who are interested to read it, once we begin the discussion. In today's webinar, we are privileged to be joined by a pool of wonderful panelists with decades of experience of dealing with e-waste, who will share their experience and learning with us. And we will introduce them to all of you as we invite them to speak. We have scheduled the program in a way so that we can spend as much as time possible to make it more interactive through question and answers. So please start posting your questions in the chat box as soon as the discussion begins. Before I proceed further, if I may request all the panelists to do the e-release of the report. So in absence of an opportunity to meet everyone in person, so this is the way basically we are releasing report these days. So if I may request all the panelists to hold the report right next to them in front of the camera so that everyone can see us, and those who haven't turned on their camera may please turn on their camera. So this is the report. Sukanya, if you could please take a photograph of this report, which we can use later for our web release. Yeah. So do we have the photo, Sukanya?
Yes, I've taken it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. So I will now invite my colleague Siddharth Singh. So before that, let me just give you a quick overview of how we have planned this webinar. So we will present the summary of the key findings of the report that we are going to discuss today. So that presentation will be made by my colleague Siddharth Singh. And post that presentation, I will invite and introduce all the speakers who will then share their presentations and talk about this issue. So Siddharth, the floor is now yours.
Thank you so much, Atin. Let me just quickly share my screen. I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yes, we can see the screen, Siddharth. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll keep it quite brief and quick so that we have time for questions and answers at the end of the session. So the presentation has been prepared on the basis of the report and that CSE has come up with, and also a report that has been submitted by the Central Pollution Control Board to the Honorable National Green Tribunal on 15th January 2021. So just to give a quick overview, e-waste has different definitions in different countries, and this is how it is defined in India. And the purpose of the definition is basically to avoid any kind of ambiguity around what falls under the scope of e-waste and what does not. right? So in India, basically, e-waste has been categorized into two broad categories, that is the IT equipments and the consumer equipments, which are further subdivided into 21 subcategories. These range from mobile phones to refrigerators. And the CPCB also in its guidelines has suggested the average life of each of the 21 types of triple E, electronic and electrical equipment, to kind of judge when the product will reach the end of its life. Right. So just quickly giving a legislative development overview of how it happened in India. So pre 1989, we did not have any legislation as such to deal with the matter of e-waste. And in 1989, e-waste was brought under the ambit of hazardous waste. It was only in 2008 that e-waste was actually addressed as a separate challenge, and the Central Pollution Control Board had issued guidelines back then to all the state pollution control boards to manage e-waste in an environmentally sound manner. And we got our first e-waste management rules in 2011, which basically also came with the rules in 2011. The concept of extended producer responsibility was introduced, where the producer was primarily made responsible for all the products that they are placing on the market. Now, in 2016, the new rules were introduced, which are still in force, very much in force, and the new concept of producer responsibility organization was introduced along with the 2016 rules. And under the broad concept of extended producer responsibility, we had some concepts like buyback and deposit refund schemes that were also introduced along with the rules. These rules then got amended in 2018, and the major change was basically a revision in the collection targets, primarily for the new entrants in the EEE market. So let's just quickly discuss on what is the need to manage e-waste, right? So definitely, like Atin mentioned in his introductory note, that it is the fastest growing stream of waste. And if you just quickly have a look at the table here, from 2015 to 2019, the amounts of e-waste that we are generating is consistently increasing at a rate of like say 10% average year-on-year growth. And if we just take this growth and what I have tried to do here is kind of predict what will be the amount that we'll be generating in the years to come. So by 2050, we will be generating over 160 million metric tons of e-waste every year. So this definitely needs to be tackled. Now, apart from the fastest growing stream, it is also the most valuable stream of waste. That is why you do not see e-waste lying in your community bins or on your street side litter, right? And the informal sector, for the informal sector, it's a very important stream of waste since it's the most valuable. And also the circular economy potential of e-waste is much, much higher if we compare it to any other stream of waste, say plastic waste or in general municipal solid waste. So if recyclers and producers come together and kind of have a discussion, have a productive discussion around how we need to take this ahead, I think the circular economy from e-waste is definitely possible. Now, what is the problem? So with respect to e-waste management in India, we have quite a lot of problems, right? So the first problem is that we do not know the amount of e-waste that we are generating as a country. So as a matter of fact, as per the latest CPCB report, India generated a little over 1 million metric tons of waste in the fiscal year 2019 and 20. However, if reports from Global E-Waste Monitor 2020 are to be believed, then India generated well over 3 million metric tons of e-waste in 2019 alone. Now, this leads us to the conclusion that we definitely are not sure on how much are we generating every year, right? The second problem is about the imports. So on paper, our imports are banned, but if you look at the e-waste management rules along with the hazardous waste management rules, import is not banned, but it is regulated, since the imports of a lot of second-hand equipments are allowed in the country. And these imports that we get have to be re-exported back to the country of origin, but data on that seems to be missing. We do not know what is the amount of second-hand triple E that we are importing, and what is the percentage share that is exported back to the country of origin. Also, the other issue here is the HS code. So we do not have different HS codes for e-waste and for second-hand goods. So primarily, it is difficult to kind of distinguish between what we are importing is actually e-waste or second-hand goods. The next thing is accountability. So if the reports from CPCB are to be believed, then in 2017-18, all the producers collectively achieved a collection target of 3.5% of the total e-waste that we generated, while the collection target assigned to them was close to 5%. And in 2018-19, the overall collection rate was close to 10%, as against a target of 20%. So definitely, we are not able to meet the unambitious targets that have been set by the rules, and this alone raises a lot of questions on how we are planning to take it ahead from here. About the recycling efficiency of the formal recyclers, so according to the report that CPCB has submitted to the National Green Tribunal, there are 407 recycling plants with a capacity of 1.1 million metric ton. However, the report also says that for a lot of formal recyclers, the recycling capacity is inflated, uh, which again is a very big challenge, since the SPCBs themselves, they inflate the recycling capacity of the formal recyclers. Apart from that, I would also want to discuss that only 9% of the total e-waste that we generated was actually recycled or processed in these formal recycling plants in 2017-18, and in 18-19, close to 21% was recycled in informal recycling units. So where does the rest of the e-waste go? So it definitely goes to the informal recyclers. Now, the informal recyclers, definitely they have a very good network of collection and channelization of waste, but the problem starts when they actually, get their hands into recycling. But also at the same time, there is an inhibition in the informal recyclers, like due to the existing tax schemes that we have. It discourages the informal recyclers to get themselves registered and formalized. So this again is a problem that we need to focus on. So what is the way forward from here? So uh, what I think is, we definitely need better methodology for estimations, because currently the estimates that we have is for the registered producers only, and we do not know what is the amount of producers who have not got themselves registered. Also, in the estimates, we have not factored in the amount of e-waste that we are importing as a country, and definitely the imports that we do with respect to second hand used goods, or for that matter e-waste, they need to be regulated. This can be achieved by coordination between ports authorities and officials from SPCBs and PCCs. We definitely need much more stringent monitoring and enforcement, since most of a big number of producers have not been able to meet their collection targets since the last when the rules were notified and came into force. So, and even for that matter, about the recycling potential. So most of it is underutilized. It is on paper, it is inflated. So the authorities definitely need to take both these points and work out a mechanism on how do we actually monitor and enforce the existing rules that we have in force. About the inclusion of informal sector, like I already discussed, they are very good at with their reach, with their network, with the kind of channelizing that they have the capability to do. But the moment they resort to non-scientific methods of recycling, that is when everything goes haywire. And we should definitely include them for channelizing the waste collection, and channelizing should be included as a part of informal sector. But recycling is something that they should not be involved with at least at this point of time. About incentivizing recycling schemes, there are a lot of producers who have actually taken a lot of steps on how to achieve circular economy, how to integrate recycled parts in their new products. And with these, I think incentivizing the companies who are actually trying to do something good would be a good step to move ahead. And giving them rebates in their procurement process if they are going for a green procurement, incentivizing those processes would help us to go a long way in this. And definitely, last but not the least, is to improve awareness of the consumers. As a consumer, very few people are aware of the kind of health hazards that triple E comes with, right? One suggestion that from the top of my head is to kind of give a disclaimer in every advertisement of electronic product that this is a health hazard, like we do for tobacco and alcohol products. So with that note, I would like to end my presentation, and um, Atin, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Siddharth, for very nicely, summarizing the key findings of the report. And this probably sets a nice prelude to the discussions that we are going to have with the help of the fantastic panelists that we have. So now I would like to invite the first panelist to discuss on this issue, Dr. Sandip Chatterjee, who is the director with the Ministry of Electronic and Information Technology, Government of India. And if I may request Siddharth to kindly introduce Dr. Chatterjee before we inviting him to speak. And I will also request all the panelists to try and restrict their presentations to about 10 minutes each, so that we have more time for discussions and question and answer. Siddharth, over to you.
Right, right. Welcome, Dr. Sandeep. Dr. Sandeep is a scientist, a director, and head of the Department of Electronics, Materials, and Components Development Division, Ministry of Electronics, Information Technology, Government of India. He's a postgraduate in physics from University of Calcutta and doctorate from University of Delhi. Um, for successful completion of research work on materials of rare earth oxides and rare earth oxysulfide phosphorus from National Physics Laboratory, New Delhi. He's also a nodal officer in the Ministry for developing recycling technologies of electronic waste management, and successfully completed 5 projects till technology demonstration stages. His work has been recognized and thereby received President's Award from former Honorable President of India in 2014. He had published more than 100 research articles in peer-reviewed journals, 2 patents, and 3 books from international publishers. Dr. Chatterjee has also rich working experience in electronic component industry, a color picture manufacturing company during 1995 to 2000 at JCT Electronics, Vadodara. He is presently engaged in creating a center of excellence on emerging areas for creating ecosystem of indigenously developed technologies for Indian manufacturers. 5 COEs, including rechargeable battery, e-waste recycling technology, additive manufacturing for electronics and photonics component, lithium ion based mobile accessories, programmable photonic integrated circuits and systems have so far been established. So, Dr. Sandeep Chatterjee, I welcome you, and the floor is yours. Dr. Chatterjee, you are on mute. If you could please unmute yourself.
Now I'm audible?
Absolutely, sir. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Siddharth, for kind words, and also Atin giving me the chance to speak some of the activity of Ministry of Electronics and IT. Really, I should thank the CSC team for giving coming out a very informative, article or rather book, which will be helpful for the stakeholders, various part of the stakeholders, to know the real status in the year 2021. If you see our aspiration to do the digital, economy and digital India program, and giving service to the citizen through mobile phone. So it would be a natural that we will be consuming more electronics, and we should have a sustainable ecosystem so that we should handle the generation of the electronics and recycling it, and to ensure the, of course, circular economy, to manage it properly. Of course, if you see some snapshot of our figure, our ministry's vision to consume electronics to 420 billions worth of US dollars. So we're growing very fast for last almost 6 years. This is some of the figures quoted in our annual report. We are growing in terms of production, export, and also import. And in all vertical, of course, mobile device is a sunrise one. So we are growing for faster rate. So this is some of the snapshot of mobile ecosystem or mobile manufacturing ecosystem in the country. Initially, by 2014, we have only two company. Now you see we are almost more than 200 companies in the country, and already by 2019 we have made 330 million of mobile handset, and worth of 30 billions US dollar. And for last 1 year, on 1.5 year, I should say, during the COVID, we have made a real impact for creating a scheme called PLI. You must have aware of production link incentive and specs, and that is actually growing much faster rate, so that we can have some big manufacturing ecosystem in the country. So this is one snapshot to that. So entire ecosystem, how fast we are changing our electronics product for the different functionality. We are growing. That is not very good sign. From 2016, if you see, and 2019, India has come from 5th position globally to the 3rd position. So we are having 3.23 million metric ton of electronic waste. But we should think in a different terms. Our ministry thinks that this is a resource material. In 3.23 million metric ton, almost 1.6 million metric tons are the ferrous metal. Around 0.7 million metric tons of various types of plastics, where you have engineering plastic as well, and 0.4 million metric ton of non-ferrous metals, where we have precious metal like gold, copper, silver, and platinum, palladium, and other things. So these are the things we should see, that if you can industrially manage this waste, so it will be a economic boost to the country. But of course, you have already mentioned, we have a very vibrant rules, regulation in the country. But if you see the Schedule 1, we are still talking about 21 products. But entire ecosystem, almost European having more than 600 products, and most of the products we are using. So we also do not know these products are chosen based on their critical raw material point of view, or toxicity point of view, or rather volume point of view. So we should see and include more product into the system, so that EPR can be implemented for the other product. So as per my record goes, we have almost 1900 producers enrolled with CPCB. So if you have the more than 600 products, so maybe around 2,000 or 3,000 companies will come into that thing. So you can track the resource material from other product as well. Of course, the mass balancing, the leakage is there from stakeholder to stakeholder. So to address that, we should have a mass balancing. CPCB, I think, in a final stage to come up with that system, because our ministry helped them to develop certain software, but still that is not implemented. Of course, whatever the 407 recyclers you're talking about, we do not know their capacity, their infrastructure, technical capability, and how they are working. And PRO dismantler recyclers benchmarking based on their process, and this is also another issue. And of course, you flagged upon that awareness to the citizen and all the stakeholders. Then final 2 points: affordable technology, machine, equipment, India-centric means to process it better way, this waste in a cost-effective way are some of the issues. In the last 3 bullet, our ministry has worked for last almost 10 years. So I'll be showing some of the things like Greenie movement. People might have known it. It started from 2015 to 2020 up to March 2020. 31 states we touch based. This is one of the vibrant website. Anybody can go to the greenie.gov.in. Almost 1 crore hit. And we have created this website now for a sustainable mode. We have all 9 stakeholders content material, trainers training modules there freely available. Anybody can download it and do it further course on it. We have created around 3,000 Greenie champions as a expert who can further handhold this training to different parts of the country. We have a Diksha platform in Ministry of Education's website where 7th to 9th standard course we have uploaded for student. Also in that website, in our Greenie website, you have a films, short films, video, and pamphlet, different type of posters can be used for further rollout. Inventory is a challenge you have mentioned already. So under that program, we have studied this. What is the challenge? How the state government cannot do the inventory study actually. It is part of the rule that state government should do, because the state-wise data is not, sales data is not available. So we have studied and we have submitted a report to the MOEF and CPCB as well. Now, these are some of the snapshot we have by the Greenie program. We have already touched base 17 lakhs participants in all stakeholders, and through cinema we almost reach out 21 crores Indians. Now this is the technology repository. We started our journey from 2007. We have tried actually manually dismantling the main stress we have given, because we have a manpower here. But the printed circuit board, lithium-ion battery, some plastics, rare earth from magnet, permanent magnet, and phosphorus. So these are the area we require a technology. We have intervened. So in NML Jamshedpur, we have done the physical method. We are pulverizing the printed circuit board and screening it by the eddy current and magnetic separator, gravity separator, and hydrometallurgy used for extracting the 4 metals, gold, silver, and copper and palladium. And another method we have tried similar to Umicore, where CMAT and E-Parisara has done, that is melting method, where pyrolysis, melting, and then electrolysis we have tried. And we have found that the 7 categories of plastics are also used. And these plastics we have converted to the master batch, then making a product. We have tested the toxicology and got the BIS certificate. And this technology handed over to one company in Bhubaneswar. And all those low-cost technology we have created, along with the machine, Indian machine. So we thought that we should create a center of excellence with the participation from the industry. So last 2019, we have created a center of excellence with Telangana government, 40-40-20 participation, where national and international institutes are already engaged. So in that Center of Excellence, we are targeting 50 SMEs to be created, 12 startups, 10 informal to be upgraded, 100 SMEs training should be given to the for the ROHS, and PhD students, 20 MTechs to be created, and also 500 kg PCB plant in the Telangana site will be creating. So these are the some of the offerings from the center. So we have a pyrometallurgy to hydrometallurgy process of PCB handed over one of the company in India already, Namo E-Waste Faridabad, and I'll be showing who are others are interested for this technology. This is the lithium-ion battery where we have up to tier level 4 for hydrometallurgy and tier level 4 for pyrometallurgy. All technologies have been patented, PCB as well as the lithium-ion battery. This is the spin magnet where we reach already tier level 4. And this is your phosphor, that is the low value material or product you can call. But rare earth, which is a very important material for the country like India. Now, Indian Rare Earth is a defense company, strategic company. They are tied up with CMAT Hyderabad for taking a semi-processed CFL and picture tube phosphor to take up their plant. So this is a very good arrangement. So if you can eco park type of arrangement, those material can be utilized for our need for the rare earth. This is another, of course, this is not in the 21 list, solar panel or photovoltaic panel, but we have started our research or technology creation there. So this is solar panel technology creation. We are at the tier level 2. Now this is very interesting slide where you see from the Center of Excellence for PCB recycling, 7 more industries are interested to take. But we found that in one by one, giving the technology will not serve the entire country. So we are now taking a board of our technology partner who can further roll out our technology throughout the country. So 7 parties have already been identified. We will be giving the first technology transfer cost from our CMAT. Then they will be giving 5 to 10 more, hand holding to the different parties. So this is very interesting development. And in lithium-ion batteries also 7 companies have joined. Now this is another important thing I should mention. IIT Hyderabad has created a MTech program on EOS resource engineering management with CMAT Hyderabad. So we are taking some of the course content as a faculty, and they are getting hands-on training so that this MTech can come up to the market with a startup idea and with the machines and other things. Skill development, of course, there are 20 to 30 lakhs informals are working. We require to upgrade their skill. That is the need of the hour. In Northeast, we have already tried. We have started one program where 30 candidates from each states will be giving training, and 20 master trainer will be created. And now this is all about me. But what are some of the things I should flag before ending this thing? Refurbished is one of the important aspects we should stress, but somehow it is in informal channel in our country. To channelize that, I thought that we should have a right to repair act in the country. Also, we should have a recycling standard, CENELEC, global recycling standard, ISO, R2, etc. Eco labels and green stickers should be one thing. Our ministry has started some activity into it. Circular economy indicator, green public procurement. So these are some of the things we should concentrate. Design for environment, that is also another aspects. Of course, mostly with the assembling industry. Most of the components and other things are coming from our Asian, Asian countries, other Asian countries. But we should see how this toxic chemical material can be reduced, and how the product should be designed so that recyclability should be better. So this is my last slide. So we should think that products should be designed for longer life, design for environment, RE to consider during the resource efficiency to consider during the manufacturing process, Awareness of resource efficiency and circular economy should be stressed than only e-waste awareness. We should track the secondary raw material, we should track the critical raw material, motivation to incentivize the green design and innovation. Already we have touched upon this, Siddharth. And legislation and regulatory framework, right to repair, eco-level to promote circular economy, standard refurbishment for dismantling, segregation and recycling, so that we can spread out how many of the 407s are doing the right job. And another thing I should just flag, e-waste management is allowing refurbishment, but our ministry is having a CRO, compulsory registration obligation, which allows the product to be launched in the country once they are certified. But for refurbished product, there is no standard or standard operating procedure. So that also needs to be addressed, and consumer to be so that consumer can have a safety and quality standard. That's all from my side. Over to Siddharth.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chatterjee. It was really insightful, and you practically have addressed all the key concerns that basically Siddharth brought out in his presentation. So I request you to stay with us, and I can see a lot of questions are being posted. So I will request all the panelists to stay with us till the end of the program, so that we can collectively answer them. I would now request our next panelist, Dr. Rachna Arora, who is team leader and coordinator for European Union Resource Efficiency Initiative in India for GIZ. And Siddharth, if I may request you to kindly introduce Dr. Rachna Arora before you invite her to present.
Absolutely. So welcome Dr. Rachna Arora. For the participants, Dr. Rachna Arora is working as team leader in the resource efficiency project of GIZ, funded by the European Union on issues related to fostering resource efficiency and circular economy. She's also working as team leader on the GIZ Circular Economy Solutions project to prevent marine litter, financed by the German Ministry of Environment, Nature Conservation. She's been working with GIZ since 2007 under the bilateral projects, Combi Finance projects of European Commission, and the partnership projects with the private sector with relevant ministries and government departments. She's been supporting the Government of India on policy formulation and its implementation, particularly on electronic waste management, resource efficiency, construction and demolition waste, end-of-life vehicles, and circular economy. She is a TEDx speaker on circular economy. She is also a doctorate degree in environmental chemistry from the Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee. She was a member of the task force and interdepartmental committee set up by NITI Aayog on resource efficiency strategy implementation in India. She is also a part of the research and development committee set up by the Department of Information Technology and Communication, Government of India on electronic waste management. She is also working group member of the Fiji Circular Economy Group constituted in 2017 to support industry research and dialogues on circular economy. On that note, I welcome you, Dr. Rachna Arora, and the floor is yours.
Thanks, Siddharth. Before I begin, I would like to congratulate you and Atin, in fact, CSC, for actually releasing the report and I think bringing something new on the table, even though the recommendations would at least sound quite a lot familiar, but I would still say it just initiates the dialogue repeatedly. We keep putting in more and more stuff for the government, for the private sector to bring. So I think it's a good, I think good compilation, and thanks and congratulations for this entire initiative. To begin with, let me just share my screen. Just let me know if this works.
Yeah, it is visible. You can please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so I would just pick from where Dr. Chatterjee actually ended, and I think a little bit of a narrative, at least, both on the Ministry of Environment as well as on the producers, plus the Ministry of IT is actually looking at changing the dialogue on EPR as well as bringing in these tools around circular economy. So I see that change and the narrative now, even though I think you presented the history that it started from 2008. So yeah, I think that's a good beginning, and there's a lot to be done on the EPR implementation in India. But I would still say, let me just, yeah, okay, yeah. So yeah, some of the policy recommendations which we have through the work that we have done around the resource efficiency, as well as the other kind of projects which we've done in e-waste in India. Of course, I think something around which is very, very basic is to strengthen the capacities of the state pollution control boards. Even a lot of monitoring is with the CPCB, and I think these EPR plans are clearly managed and looked at the CPCB report, which they submitted as well to the NGT, but we would still see a lot of gaps when it comes to the capacities of the SPCBs with regard to the enforcement, monitoring, and reporting requirements. So this is a big area of concern, and it comes out also quite clearly in your report as well. The other bit Dr. Chatterjee mentioned was about the reach out to consumers, to households, and kind of just making this link around. It gets channelized, it gets segregated, but it doesn't go into the right stream. We still have the similar figure of 90% entering the informal market, and I think this is where still a lot of work around awareness is to be undertaken, both with the kind of government initiative like what METI did over the last few years. Similar engagement still need to be continued. I think this, because we have a big diversity of the population that we talk in India, and I think that's where we need to just start thinking around very interesting tools when it comes to awareness creation around these products, and of course channelizing it into the right kind of collection system. Then of course skilling and the informal sector is something which is key, and this is a big area of concern. It comes out repeatedly in all the conversations, and we need to move forward on what does it mean when we talk about skilling the informal sector, and where is the role that authorities, especially the SPCBs and the CPCBs, see for the sector to contribute and work around. And I think this is where I would just also have another kind of slide around. When it comes to the monitoring frameworks, we're still looking at doing things which are more integrated. For instance, this inventorization as well. Since years we have been talking about developing something which is more as in holistic, and it covers the need for the SPCBs when it comes to reporting requirements. And these inventorization methodologies, once it is universal, you'll not have much of a difference when it comes to a report coming from Gujarat or a report coming from Assam. Even though the numbers would differ, the methodologies are similar, so it's comparable. And I think this is where we need still a lot of guidance from the MOEF, CPCB, as well as the METI, as it was just mentioned by Dr. Chatterjee, that there's some progress which is happening on this part. The other bit is on recyclers when it comes to the 300 or 240 recyclers which are operational in India. What are the kind of capacities when it comes to their handling? And I think on the report you clearly again reiterated that it's 90% going into the informal. So what are the audit mechanisms? If the producers are actually getting penalized once in a while, why not put in checks and balances for the recyclers who are currently kind of looking at state-of-art recycling, but something doesn't get recycled in their facility? What happens with their downstream value chain, and how is this kind of waste channelized into different kind of streams, and hardly it gets into their facilities into recycling? So this needs a very, very transparent kind of audit mechanism, and so that you actually just don't account for double reporting or the paper trading, which is very, very clear in the last few years since the target was introduced from the 2016, 2017, as in the counts were started from 2017. So yeah, I think the other bit is very clearly to actually look at guidelines on secondary resource management. This would be incentive for the recyclers or for the producers to actually look at scope for urban mining, look at substitution of the raw material which is required for production. Even though if we are not, I'm sure with the kind of research projects that METI is trying to do, or the electronic strategy, or the policy actually clearly looks at substituting the demand for virgin raw material. So there we see a lot of scope for electronic waste to actually look to initiate something on urban mining in India. I think this is one of the most relevant streams to actually focus, and ministry like METI is progressively thinking about changing these setups, looking at the R&D setup which is existing in India. I would say this is something which really needs to be thought through and brought forward by the government in a very, very organized setup. Then, of course, I think this entire discussion around the negative and the positive financial incentives. So, for instance, certain products, when it comes to the EPR fund of EPR kind of setup, it actually could also be looked at by the producers to actually say some sorts of grants or subsidies for the authorized recyclers, because I'm sure for producers also, when they do their audit checks, it's very difficult for them to also pick out few of these recyclers who might be recycling the waste that they receive. And I think this is where, if there is some sort of a financial support to these recyclers to actually look at moving forward, enhancing the waste management infrastructure, I think these could also be things which actually brings in a financial incentive and is jointly supported through that. The other bit is around repairs, which now METI clearly talks about as right to repair. I think here we really need to look around tax breaks when it comes to repairs, and to actually support the local service industry, to actually look at both skill development as well as a kind of a financial instrument like tax breaks, which can support the entire local economy when it comes to enhancing repair as an economy and extending the life of the product. The other bit which works quite a lot, at least on the packaging waste, is the DRS. This was one of the instruments proposed as well for e-waste. And I think this could still be validated for e-waste. In India, it needs a lot of support and back and forth with the producers, but I think this could still be checked out and may create an incentive for the brands to actually look at eco-design and recyclability opportunities for India as such. And of course, I think globally, when it comes to the global traded products, better eco-design incentives could actually look at designing products which are more environmentally sustainable, and as well as also look at environment sensitive design. For instance, in the case of ROHS, we already have kind of a benchmark which is harmonized both in the EU and India, which makes it a global competitiveness. On informal sector, I mentioned that there is a lot that needs to be actually done. We hear it always that we need to include the informal sector, but there's no dedicated policy. There are very, very little projects that actually focus around it. And I think this is one of the key areas where we see still the 90% number coming in. This needs, I would say, again, a thought process discussion. There are PROs who are working with the informal sector, but why not create structures which make them a formal part and not just keep them saying that they are informal and they're, of course, creating a lot of environmental issues, because I think we need to recognize the importance and kind of bring it on a dedicated platform. For instance, as it was initiated for Telangana, and I'm sure around the work that they are doing with the Excellence Center and with this technology being taken forward, there is a role and scope to actually look at informal sector workers coming onto a formal platform, and of course making use of this kind of a technology, at least with one state to begin with. And of course, I think we really need innovative business models. This is one of the examples of the work which we did years back with Sahas. Sahas still works as a collection agency for e-waste, and yeah, they have a buyback or a kind of an exchange with e-Parisara for certain components which of course they don't recycle in their facility. It goes to e-Parisara as a licensed recycler, but they work closely with the informal sector workers, both in their e-waste as well as in the plastic or in the dry waste stream. So I think these kind of models, there are many of them across in different kind of geographies in India. This needs to be taken forward, and someone has to go down to the kind of issues which the informal sector has, and of course bring them together into a formal picture. On standards, I would just say that this is something which we tried to do in the last year of our project, because being an EU project, we were actually just looking at if there is a role and scope to identify some of the European standards which can be applied to the Indian context. So the WEEE legislation in India draws a lot of experiences, I would say, from the EU legislation. So similarly, the standards like Senelec standards actually do relate a lot when it comes to its implementation. Of course, the issues of informal sector or other parts of leakages are quite different when it comes to EU and India, but still our this work which we did over the last years with our partners like Adelphi, WEEE Forum, which is a kind of a Belgian association for the PROs in India, specifically on e-waste. And I think this was a good partnership to actually bring together European as well as two large, I would say, PRO groups, WEEE Forum as well as Karo Sambhav in India, together with a renowned recycler like Umicore, to actually put forward things which make it more palatable to the Indian kind of conditions, and also look at adapting a framework which is more suited to the Indian conditions. So I would just take few of these slides to actually just share what exactly came out from this work. And so basically, I think looking across, first of all, identifying who is interested where. So producers, of course, would be interested in creating a level playing field, creating a recycling benchmark, which is I was earlier mentioning in terms of the audit recycling benchmarks for the different kind of recyclers which are present in India. Similarly, for the formal collector, recycler, they are interested in looking at the compliance with legislation, public organization looking at enforcement, and consumer groups, environmental groups looking at a better channelization. So this is something which was there, and in our work also, we clearly mentioned the illegal import and the infrastructure, the lack of infrastructure which we currently have still in India on e-waste recycling. So certain kind of recommendations on this, and this is just kind of a lot of recommendations here in one slide, but we can share the report with you if any of you are interested. So basically, I think something which was coming out clearly was to actually look at the available standards which are there, for instance, R2 and others which are still available in India, and then of course looking at catering to these to the Indian conditions. So when it comes to enforcement of these standards in India, it would be challenging. Of course, we know the Indian conditions because of lack of awareness with the informal recycling. Investments from the manufacturers and recyclers are still needed. Then, of course, value creating aspects of these standards still need to be put forward, because even we are still struggling to put this kind of a document to the ministry, to the CPCB, as well as to the government, because it still needs a value creation and a hook when it comes to taking these kind of things forward. And on the informal sector, of course, the lack of compliance is there. So what we largely suggested was to actually have a prospective conformity assessment system, which can bring an entire system-wide changes across the value chain actors that we try to map and look at what are the different issues that can be tackled through this kind of an assessment system. This needs to be developed further. And of course, certain policy signals that we receive from the government, Dr. Chatterjee didn't mention about this, but since years they've been talking about setting up an eco park. And I think no recycling recovery targets right now are difficult. Since we have a policy signal from one side, we still have a mismatch that there are no recycling recovery targets, it's only the correction one. So there's not a progressive thinking when it comes to improving the recycling and recovery targets. This was one of the main recommendations when it comes to adapting CERELAC standards to India. Then, of course, categories have already been mentioned. It should be expanded. And for example, solar panels, it's still being discussed to actually put them under hazardous waste because of the glass, silica, and other components. So this needs a lot of discussion, even though Dr. Chatterjee presented, it is still a lot. As a technology, it fits into the electronic part and not as a hazardous part of the solar panel. So this needs, I think, discussion and needs more elaboration on how these categories could be expanded. And of course, subcategories need to be specific as well. Then, of course, with this negative treatment value of the waste which have a negative value, for instance, lamps and others, it needs an additional financial support. Otherwise, it's not going to get recycled. These waste you still see around, and the component which, of course, has no financial gains just goes discarded somewhere within the downstream actors, which, of course, creates a lot of environmental risk. Then I think for the bulk consumers, largely the public tenders is a big area for leakages. And this is where a lot of compliance considerations from the standards could actually help supporting a better enforcement monitoring. And of course, also look at the compliance in the downstream actors, which usually through the public tenders is just one set of paper which shows that the recycler is recycling, but of course it's difficult to validate and look at the full compliance across the downstream actors there. a certain bit, I think, on urban mining, as I mentioned. This is one example of a project which was in the EU, where it was called as ProSum project. So if you look at a progressive idea, so of course, currently we have e-waste, which is a material-rich waste. We have end-of-life vehicles, batteries, lithium-ion batteries, a lot of research, for instance, that METI is doing. We need a kind of a platform where these things are accessible, even though I would say data is still an issue in India, but we should just start conceptualizing these kind of central database, which is actually helping us as an economy, helps us to look at the material stocks, flows, different actors, treatment solutions, because batteries and electronic waste, mining waste, these things could still add volume for a recycler who could look at setting up integrated or a better recycling facility rather than just doing an e-waste and then of course doing mining waste separately. So maybe we can just create that kind of a mechanism as well. And this platform is available. You can check through the data which they have across the EU member states as well. So this, yeah, I think was a good initiative to actually just look at better value creation when it comes to these kind of waste streams in India. This is on the circular economy aspect, just the last slide that I have, that a lot of approaches on circular economy do talk about subscription-based models. It is coming across in India as well. This is one example from Grover, which is a German kind of a startup. And in 2019, they're also backed by Circularity Capital, like a financial support. But they also look at supporting like through this recirculation and subscription-based model. In 2019, which was the second or third year of their launch, they were actually able to kind of recirculate 94,000 devices. Similar number and turn-ups they have even during the corona, like last year in 2020. Their report looks fascinating for 2020. And I would say these kind of models would pick up in India also soon. Does this consider the EPR plan? How is these kind of things would be related? And I think here the producers would need smart ways of looking at a shift in the entire way products are sold in India. Maybe it won't sound too interesting because it's difficult, but at least for us as consumers, these things would come up. It's coming in cars also altogether, looking at subscription based services. Similarly, even on these, the waste kind of generation drastically reduces if you look at subscription services rather than. So this is an upstream instrument that can be tried rather than just the end-of-life instruments which are there. The last slide around the eco-design bit, that the guidelines should actually try and include, there should be a guideline first of all on eco-design. Even though if we don't manufacture products, I think we still could have kind of a discussion around the longevity of these products, looking at extending the life of the product. And I think these guidelines could include both recyclability, repair manual, support services, and of course, availability of spare parts, modular design like Fairphone or iFixit. And this is not kind of far from India. We already have a repair economy. We have startups and innovators in India who are already working on this space when it comes to both software innovation as well as the hardware components. And there are already interesting repair labs that have been set up in India. And I think this is the moment, and really happy to hear Nikki talk about a right to repair. And I think this is where the industry could see the next kind of change when it comes to extending the product lifespan. Thanks a lot. Over to you, Siddharth.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Arora. It was a fantastic presentation. I'm aware that you have a different commitment following this event. So, but you may leave, and if we have any question based on your presentation, then definitely I will reach out to you so that we can have your answer and communicate back to the participant who has actually raised the question. So thank you so much for the wonderful presentation.
Thank
you. So the next presenter that we have today is Dr. Deauli Krial, who is the Managing Director of Sophie Sustainability Leaders Private Limited in India. So before I invite Dr. Krial to present, if I may request Siddharth to kindly introduce her.
Yeah, so welcome, Dr. Deauli. Dr. Deeuli is the Managing Director of SOPI's Sustainability Leaders Private Limited in India. She has extensive research and implementation experience in e-waste management in India and Europe. She has also published several papers in peer-reviewed journals on the topic. She has worked as an expert consultant on e-waste for international development projects as well as private sector companies. She was instrumental in setting up the capacity development activities of the STEP initiative, a UN-supported forum on the e-waste problem. Currently based in Mumbai, she has a doctoral degree from the University of St. Gallen, Switzerland, having written her thesis on e-waste forecasting, especially from a consumer behavior perspective. She is also a certified EMS auditor, and her core competencies are research and implementation, as well as coordination and conducting projects in various socio-economic contexts in developed and developing countries. So I welcome you, Dr. Deeuli, and the floor is now yours. You may please present.
Thank you so much for that very kind and generous introduction, Siddharth, and thank you also, Atin, for inviting me to this webinar. And of course, like the earlier speakers, congratulations for this report as well. I think it brings to the table the important discussions around e-waste, around the implementation, etc., that we need to have. And it's always good to share these thoughts. And I'm glad to be able to present a few ideas, picking up also based on what Dr. Chatterjee and Rachna already mentioned. So they've already laid a very, very strong foundation for what I'm going to speak about. I'll talk very, very briefly because I'm sure everybody would like to have a chance to ask questions as well. So before I go into the more technical content, just a quick overview on SOPHIS. So we are what we call ourselves a micro multinational. We're headquartered in Geneva, but have offices in UK and India. So we are a bit of a multinational consultancy, and we've been around for about 12 years now. And we work mainly in these 6 broad areas. And of course, my expertise, as Siddharth mentioned, is very much on secondary resources, in e-waste particularly. And across our offices, we work a lot on the topic of e-waste and circular economy, and we've done all sorts of different types of engagement related to policy, to advisory, compliance, on-ground pilots, etc. So I've been in the field for about 16, 17 years now. So it's been really nice to see how this has evolved. And I just thought I'll share this very quick graphic with everyone in terms of, how the overall landscape on e-waste and e-waste legislation has changed in the last 25 years. On the left of the screen, you see only 2 or 3 dots, Sweden, Switzerland, Taiwan, that really had any kind of legislation in place for e-waste. And then 20, 25 years later, you have the whole world awash with different types of legislation in different stages of implementation. And what this means is that, on the one hand, you have policy really driving the agenda, really creating the need for compliance. And then also on the industry side, there is a whole, momentum building up on in industry towards the whole concept of circular economy. And there is a lot of interest from large companies. These are just 2 examples I've picked up from their sustainability reports from HP and Apple here. And it looks and it really talks about how can the whole life cycle be looked at, and all the things that were mentioned earlier by Dr. Chatterjee, by Rachna, in terms of secondary resources, materials, repair, etc., are part of this circular economy concept. So this is, in a way, looking at how can the challenges be turned into opportunities. What are the potentials that we have when we look at e-waste? As this growing waste stream, as earlier was mentioned, the global environmental, the global e-waste monitor is something I've been involved in for the last several years now, and everyone has, of course, cited the data from that. So I'm not going to go into the details from that. But what I'd like to do is pick up some of the recommendations from the report that CSE has and link it to what we know and what we do at the international level. So looking at where the global perspectives also lie. So the first recommendation that I think is really interesting is about inventorization. And, Rachna already mentioned this project, the Frozen project. It's something that I was involved in for the project itself. So I really think it's a very, very valuable tool to have at the end, which is to understand what is our urban mine. What are the materials that we can recover? Where does it lie, and how can it be collected and recycled? And having this inventory is, of course, understanding what is the size and the scale and the magnitude of the problem. But then it also helps you with all sorts of, elements in the policy side. How do you optimize targets? What is possible? What is not possible? I mean, having targets that are realistic is also important. And that is based on data. And that comes from really doing a proper inventory. And then establish policies which can, steer and direct those targets, whether you want a product-based target or whether you want a material-based target. It depends on, where are their resource constraints, etc. So having that inventory, and in this case, a good example from the Frozen project was to look at how could targets be optimized to looking at critical raw materials, and where there is a need for critical raw materials to be recovered, if there were ways to incentivize that through policy. And the fourth is, of course, to understand what are the financial resources that are needed to manage this whole waste stream. And everyone talks about EPR. At the very core of the concept of EPR is to create the financing mechanism that can sustain the whole reverse system, to collect it, to ensure that it is treated properly and recycled properly, and you get the material at the end to put it back into the economy. So this was, I think, a really good point, brought up by the report. And a lot of countries, Europe has, of course, taken the lead, but a lot of countries have looked at, really looking at the inventory, looking at how much e-waste is there and how can that be then inventorized to the detail of at the material level. So not just at the product level, but also at the material level. The next slide that I just pick up on is the second recommendation on imports. And there were already a couple of questions I saw in the Q&A. And I think this is really critical because there is very little data out there on what is actually being exported and imported. Between especially developed and developing countries, and this whole concept of illegal e-waste imports or illegal transboundary shipments is the reason, because they are illegal, because they happen under various disguises, under various different names, categories, etc. You can't really quantify them. There's no easy database to say, okay, you filter that out, and then you get a quantum of what is imported or is illegally imported in that case. So there is a big data gap on that. There have been trials and projects to look at how can that be somehow quantified, estimated, and it's still an evolving science, I have to say. But there is quite a lot of attention at the global level to really look at how can all the transboundary shipments, both legal and illegal, hopefully not illegal as much, or the reason to stop it would be to really digitize the reporting and to really make that much more harmonized across countries. So any illegal waste is also picked up. It can be then controlled, and the enforcement is easier. And also, what the World Customs Organization is looking at is how could secondhand goods, and this is always a big debate on how can goods that are not waste, that are still able to be used, so they are not end of life, but only end of use for a certain person. How could any trade in waste, any trade in secondhand goods be differentiated from a trade in waste? So could it be through different HS codes, etc., for example? So that these are ongoing discussions at the global level. And of course, there is no quick, easy fix solution to that. So it's probably still going to be a while before we see them actually being implemented. So then going on to the next point, which is really looking at e-waste as an engine of growth. And this is certainly, picking up from where Dr. Chatterjee left off, mentioning some of the initiatives that CMET, the MATI, etc., have already taken. So there is, I think, a huge potential for both, developing entrepreneurship, investment, getting a lot of people jobs in this. And of course, there is the environmental aspect to it, because it's, making sure that you can keep dangerous hazardous fractions out of soil and air and water, etc. So how could you look at it from a jobs perspective? The reason I wanted to focus a little bit here was because I know that there were a lot of students interested in this topic, and I think for students there is a huge world of opportunity in this space because it is a really up and coming greenfield sector in that sense, and you have different types of opportunities at different skill levels in different parts of the value chain. These are just some of them. Then of course there's a whole load of very regular admin and compliance and management and operations jobs that could fit in here. But without making it too crowded, I just thought I'll throw in some examples because it's really a growing field. There is a need for skilled manpower. It was already mentioned a couple of times, and it's right across the value chain. So if students are considering looking at sort of sunrise sectors, this is a good one to look at, where there will be a lot of skills and competence needed. And also we need good people in this sector so that we can move it forward. We can, formalize it. We can take it to the next level. So with that, I'd just like to end my presentation and hand it back over to Atin and Siddharth. And, I'm happy to stay for a few questions. But I also do need to drop out because I have another commitment in 5 minutes. So, but yeah, if there are things, I'm happy to answer them also later. And you have my contact details there. So do feel free to contact me if you have questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kejriwal. It was a wonderful presentation, and I understand that you have a different commitment. So if you could stay with us, you can. Else, if you have to go, then you can leave, and I'll definitely come back to you with whatever question that comes your way from the participants. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So with this, yeah, thank you. With this, I will invite the next speaker today, Mr. Pranshu Singhal, who is the founder of Karosambhav, who is a producer responsibility organization. So before I request Pranshu to come and make his presentation, if I may request Siddharth to kindly introduce Pranshu.
Okay, so welcome, Mr. Pranshu, and thank you for joining us for this webinar. For the participants, I would just quickly introduce Mr. Pranshu. So, Mr. Pranshu Singhal is the founder of Karosambhav. He has pursued his environmental management and policy at Lund University in Sweden. And Pranshu has worked for Nokia's sustainability program across many different countries and continents. Right now, Pranshu is building a cohesive and comprehensive e-waste movement in India that is enabling all stakeholders to recycle responsibly. So on that note, Pranshu, over to you, and you may please proceed with your presentation.
Sure. Thank you, Siddharth. So good afternoon to all of you, and thanks to CSC for organizing the session. As Rachna said, I think it is just important to reiterate some of these messages as these are of such large importance. E-waste continues to be the fastest growing waste stream in the world, and we need to continuously keep an eye on how are we managing this stream and creating solutions around it. So I'll give you a brief idea around Karosambhav, and then what are the big challenges that we see at this point in time. Also, I'd like to discuss the progress which has been made since the introduction of the rules. So Karosambhav is a enterprise which is focused on enabling closure of material loops. We provide EPR solutions along with design solutions to enterprises, which ultimately result in creation of platforms, infrastructure for collection of varieties of waste. E-waste is something that we started with, dismantling and recycling systems, and then secondary material use reutilization. Karosambhav is working in a few sectors now. It started with electronic waste, but has started working in packaging, batteries, and we are also in early stages of designing solutions on mattresses side. How can things go circular on that side? If we come to electronic waste, we are essentially talking of a big value chain, starting from producers, and I'm going to the value chain which starts once the product is sold. So producer sells the materials to either enterprises which are bulk consumers or to citizens, which end up then becoming e-waste generators, who then pass their waste either to a waste collector, a repair shop. A bulk consumer may sell their waste to an auctioning platforms, or they may go and drop off to collection points. So the red color system, which is the large part of our system, how waste tends to move, is today unaddressed in the e-waste rules. So auctioning platforms, for example, like MSTC or any other large platforms, are today completely unaddressed in the rules. Similarly, waste collectors, waste aggregators do not find a space in the rule. And then there are also these informal dismantlers, recyclers, who again don't find a place in one way or the other. So it is imperative that, first of all, some of these channels are bought into the rules, and because they do play a significant role, either negatively or positively. So if we start looking at rules and what has happened since 2017, since the introduction of targets, what has significantly changed is the number of producers who have taken authorization has gone up. The ecosystem has evolved. There is clearly positive momentum on the development of the ecosystem. There is a very clear shift in dialogue on why should we do anything to how should we do something. It is not about still, not everyone is asking how good I do, but still, we see a very clear marked shift on why to how, from resistance to participation. And then also dialogue starting around, are the systems efficient? Are they bringing in effectiveness? Are we really, tackling toxic products? How well are we ensuring that toxicity in the products does not leach out? What kind of recovery are we attaining from collection? What is the legitimacy of the work? Is the work being done? Are the numbers being reported even legitimate? Are there standards across the value chain? And then also there is a very clear movement towards formalization of certain informal waste collectors. Karosambhav itself, for example, works with over several thousand waste pickers and aggregators across the country, and a very large movement on this formalization has been led by the organization. If we go now, I'll focus more on the challenges. We are making progress, and I'd like to just reiterate that. But can we catalyze this? And I would just like to bring in certain strong points where we need action so that work can progress. So when we talk from a brand's point of view and enforcement point of view, there is a very clear lack of level playing field for large brands, for producers, for even PROs who are doing the right work, as compared to organizations who are not wanting to do anything or are only doing paperwork. So enforcement continues to be limited to players who are visible and large. There is very little enforcement that one sees on smaller players, and I would not just say smaller players, I would say invisible players. So the more, for example, awareness campaigns you do, the more you talk, the more visible you become, and then you are more susceptible to enforcement. So actually, and this is a very odd scenario where if you want to do the right thing, you will be penalized more. If you keep quiet, if you are hidden in the dark, no one will recognize you, no one will catch hold of you. So how do we change this scenario and try to make a level playing field so that each and every brand is incentivized or is forced to take action, and not only visible producers are penalized again and again, whilst they are also the ones who are trying to do the most work. Another thing is a big, PROs is a very big element in the collection and scheme of things today. They are a representation of producers. In the present version of the rules, there is no enforcement on PROs. They are not held accountable for anything. So how does one change this, very fundamental flaw in the rules, that PROs are really let loose? It is assumed that if you submit documents, you are compliant. So even in the report, that CSC has, it talks about a lot of numbers, but those are reported numbers. Does it really mean that so much waste was really collected, or was it collected in actuality? Did recycling really happen, or was it, the best quality recycling was still missing? So, those questions still remain unanswered. Our assumption continues to be document hai to compliance hai, document hai to theek kaam hai. And that question, still deserves a very strong push, that is it really happening? Is it happening in the best possible way? Can we, drive the system to a much higher level? A very big challenge, and this is not just for for e-waste, I would say it cross sectorally. And this is a very, very big challenge. And if we do not address this elephant in the room, this is going to kill everyone or the whole good work. The costs of compliance are unknown. So there are organizations who today do all electronic waste work, for example, collection, getting it recycled, moving it from across the country at 10 rupees a kg. I mean, you can't move any good from one part of the country to another at 10 rupees a kg, 5 rupees a kg, 7 rupees a kg. So, there is, for example, a race to the bottom of the pyramid right now. Race to the bottom, that how do I lower cost while showing good compliance documentation? And this is because there is no good sectoral analysis of costs. What is the cost of procurement? At what price does a consumer want to hand over the waste? Because waste is actually, in our Indian scenario, no repair shop, no waste picker, no aggregator is going to give you waste for free. Or an individual, he wants something in return. So, and that is the biggest cost of the system, and that is quite substantial, quite high and quite substantial. So identifying these procurement costs of logistics, realistic numbers, I'm saying not fake, not unknown numbers, but realistic numbers. What kind of money can you really get from recycling? Administrative costs of managing this whole thing. This will allow, and I think we need to start upping the dialogue on cost of compliance, because what is happening today is most brands do kind of an auction, jiska bhi sabse lowest cost hai, they take it and give me this documents, and that's okay. I mean, are these documents fake, real? How good they are? How powerful they are? Is the work really happening? Or is there ethics in the value chain? That level of importance which it should be given is today not given. And unless we keep a very strong focus on cost of compliance, we make it visually, it should be known. And I believe organizations like CSC could do, fantastic work in, enabling this this transition, that, let everyone know, so as a consumer, for example, if I have, I know what is the legitimate money that I should get if I give up my mobile phone or my laptop. Today, no one knows, and this leads to this late race to the bottom, where collection tends to then become a matter of generating documentation, not necessarily real collection. So this is a very big issue, impacting whether we talk of electronic waste, we talk of packaging for plastics waste, or we will talk of battery waste once it comes. But if we don't solve this, this becomes a challenge. Today, still we have, large parts of the collection systems with no accountability. Auctioning platforms. Majority of, for example, Government of India's waste is sold via auctioning platforms. Where does this waste go? Well, it is just sold to the, XYZ recyclers, but what do they do with it? No reporting, nothing, so no clarity on what happens with this waste. Bulk consumers continue to sell their waste to waste aggregators, because if that was not the case, where is this waste? How are waste aggregators getting so much waste? They have to have some source. The individual collection cannot be so high. Or is there leakage happening from formal systems by which aggregators get? So again, we need to tighten the systems of how bulk consumers dispose. We need to bring recognition of the informal collectors. There are these people who are going door to door aggregating. Today, they don't find a role in the system. So how does one recognize and give them a definite role with a very clear earning potential, recognized for them? And then, one may say whatever, but consumers are still not willing to dispose electronic waste without getting super high incentives, which is disproportionate to the money that you can generate from recycling of that waste. Again, it has been talked about, absence of digital system continues to be a mess, because all the data sets today that are submitted either by PROs or by brands or by recyclers are in hard copies. Now, hard copy data cannot talk to each other. So how does one even analyze ki ye kaam hua hai, nahi hua hai, is it real, not real? So analysis becomes almost impossible. Then there is lack of harmonized reporting across multiple stakeholders. Leakages happening, little accounting of secondary materials. And then the last part, this is my last slide, on the recycling, treatment, recovery side, we still do not have depollution practices standardized in this country. So how does one, depollute the material, which means how do I segregate hazardous components from a product from non-hazardous components, and then I need to have a very strong focus only on the hazardous components and ensure that they are responsibly recycled. There are no recovery targets. So you collect the waste and there is a target on how much you collect. But what after collection? There has to be a recovery target that you need to recover 20%, 50%, 70%, because otherwise you may just keep on collecting endless amount of waste with very little recovery, which does not solve the problem. Then today, there are recovery technologies which are missing at scale for a whole range of materials. You talk of batteries, capacitors, various kinds of plastics, critical raw materials. Yes, pilots are here and there, for something or the other, but at scale, how does one deal with tons and tons of this waste, which is now coming in? And waste handling, recycling continues to be done in very large quantums by the informal sector. This is not something which has changed drastically. And then, as I said, if I just go and talk about the target setting itself, today we are only covering 21 categories of electronics. I mean, India, globally, hundreds of categories of electronics are covered. Even things like microwave, toasters, ovens, all of them are left out. So how do we expand these categories to make a meaningful sense out of what we are doing? There are very simple flaws, like average weight of products is still not defined. So a producer uses X gram of weight for a mobile phone, another uses Y, and his target is disproportional to someone. So again, level playing field is what gets impacted once you don't have these things. So these are some of the points which I'd like to bring up. As I said, a good amount of work has been done, but there is still a long way ahead. And we need to ensure that this momentum that has been created is not lost in the activities that are being done. So how do we continue that momentum? How do we create positive synergies, drive further ecosystem is super critical to carry this momentum. And I really believe organizations like CSC can do a phenomenal role, like they have done in multiple other sectors, to change this game. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pranshu. I mean, it was a wonderful presentation. It was a great learning experience for me at a personal level. And basically, your presentation basically connects us more to the ground level realities, and this is why your participation in this webinar was a wonderful value addition. So we have almost run out of time. I can see a few questions appearing in the QA box. So I can extend. I mean, we are supposed to close this webinar at 3:30, but I can extend it by another 5 minutes or so, and try and take as many as questions. And if I may request Dr. Chatterjee and Pranshu to stay with us for a little longer. So Siddharth, if you could quickly run through the questions and see how many we can take within the stipulated time, because I don't just want to go beyond, say, max 3:40. Yeah.
Right. So there are a few questions, but since we are short on time, I would only take up the most relevant ones right now. And for the viewers, you can reach out to us on our email ID, which Atin will share, and we will reach out to you with the answers. So the first question is to Dr. Chatterjee. It is regarding the data that we have with respect to the amount of products that we are placing on the market every year. So the data that we have right now is only in terms of finances, and we are not aware of the quantum or the number of units that are being placed on the market. So how do you suggest, Dr. Chatterjee, that what is a way to tackle this?
A very valid question. When we started inventory study under our Greeny initiative, we found that each states are giving, of course, we have taken some best market analyzer in different parts of the country, but we have found there is no standard mechanism to use. If you see the UN report, there are 4 different methods, and some of the methods are suitable for a saturated market, like in Europe and developed country, where replacement should be based on the generation of waste, because all are saturated. But in our country, there are 2 types of progression. New products are also sold, and there is a replacement market. So we have a different types of mechanism. So we studied that. We found that in our country, major brand owners are having a central level data. They do not have any state level data. And we have found if you can get some data collected from GST, so we can have some values of what the products are sold in some part of the some state. Chroma has done some work on that, but inter country this is a great challenge. So we do not have a state level data. So central level, whatever the CPCB is now sharing the data, that is the only data source we have in government level. Of course, we are not because there is a disparity because global e-waste monitoring is taking entire product, and we are concentrating on 21 products. So there will be a mismatch, huge mismatch. Of course, we requested the CPCB that once the brand owners are filling up the form, you should get the data from them that state-wise what is their sales figure. So if that data can be captured, we have some value. But what Pranshu mentioned, if you are not having the materials in each product, like how much plastics are there, precious metals are there, or rare earths are there. So instead of just getting the quantity or tonnage, we should have that type of study also, or rather we can get the information, some basic information from the brand owner, what it is composed of. I mean, if you are talking about the plastics, what type of plastics, how much it is there, and model to model how it is varying. So it is a huge mammoth work. Of course, Pranshu was right. It is not possible in a paper. It should be online. So everything, if it is in online, so we have some data source. So of course, it is a part of the MOEF and CPCB. They should we can support, we can help them, but this is one of the mammoth job not being done. I also accept.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Chatterjee. The next question is for Mr. Pranshu. This is a very interesting one, and I think Mr. Pranshu is the right person to answer this. So the question is, why do producers fall short to meet their collection targets? And the second part of the question is also like the inflated on paper capacity of the recycling plants. So what are your thoughts on that? So part one, yeah, go ahead.
So why targets are not met? For me, I think it is lack of fear of enforcement. Maybe I would attribute a lot of it to that. Because one is targets not being met, another is full efforts being made and shown that targets are not met. And from whatever I have seen of government, I think there is a very high level of willingness to understand and support in terms of creating solutions if the waste is not available. But that is not necessarily the case. The thing that I have seen, and that's why I was saying, because enforcement has been limited to visible brands. आप जितने बड़े brands होंगे उतना ही आपको आप कितना ही काम कर लो, you will get a notice. If we start changing the system and we start identifying that let us start treating everyone alike, because what is happening is because big brands or some of the visible brands who are wanting to do work also go and meet, also put their representatives in front. They everyone knows them and they are recognizable. So I think for me enforcement remains a challenge here, and again it is maturing. I would not say this is right or wrong. We have seen a great progress happening from 2017 till now, so I believe this will happen. The second part, why do recyclers inflate? Why do we see these inflated capacities? One needs to understand we have a very long tail of recyclers, and a very large chunk of these recyclers are actually informal sector aggregators who have taken a license just because they want to participate in an auctioning platform, which is not truly worried that where is this waste going. All they want is they have a mandated requirement that you give me a certificate and I'll give you all my waste, give me the highest price. And that lack of recognition that certificate does not mean compliance. I need as a platform, and I'm saying some of these largest platforms are Government of India platforms. They need to take ownership that any waste which is going out from my platform is going to be, I'm going to ensure, and I will put some checks and balances on that this waste does not leak. That's the only way out. I mean, if you start going to these so-called recycling units across the country, and I'm not saying this is a statement, it's not a blanket statement, I'm saying it, there are recyclers who are doing good work, but there are who have all these capacities which, are paper capacities. I have myself seen so many units where there is nothing but just open land, boundary wall bini hai, and they are a certified recycler. Another one, does not even have a roof shed, but it's a certified recycler. And they are present across the country. I mean, not just in 1 or 2 states. So I think a lot of enforcement, maybe public participation in enforcement is also required. One of the good things, for example, which government has done in case of certain other programs is, invited IITs, ITIs to, do, how do I say, open enforcement, or, do crowdsourcing of, how do I say, enforcement work. So, these are places which are next to you. Instead of our official going, please go, your faculty can go check this out. And, we need to start that public participation in enforcement if we are to really solve this problem at scale. And, one doesn't need to go beyond just the engineering colleges. All the great engineering colleges that are already present in the country, just reach out to them for help. A simple visit by 2 professors will get the reality out of what is happening, what is not.
Right. Absolutely, Pranshu. That was very insightful. So the next question is again for you. It has something to do about PROs, and that's why I'm throwing this at you. So it says legally how PROs are different from formal dismantlers and recyclers, and producers can technically tie up with formal recyclers to comply with e-waste rules.
Yes, ideally, and so we have a big, I would say, mistake in our rules, or actually implementation of the rules, because MOEF has kept it fairly different, but certain things have been done in the wrong way. PROs are never supposed to be recyclers or dismantlers. It's a body of, it ideally works like a cooperative of producers who is going to manage the funding, when I say funding of collection systems, awareness campaigns, whatever waste is then collected by the system is passed to recyclers. And then they audit recyclers, keep a thorough check. Now, what has happened in our system is we have forgotten that PRO is a entity on its own, which is a producer's collaborative. And this entity is an auditor in the system. Here we have mixed auditor and auditee by giving a PRO license to a recycler, which essentially means मैं अपना ही audit करूंगा. So, which again leads to all this problem of leakages in the sector, challenges. This requires a major correction in the way the rules are being driven. And if this is not done, I don't know how long can responsible PROs continue to exist. Eventually they will just die out, because you can't compete with 5 rupees for collection of electronic waste, or 10 rupees or 15 rupees. Today work, as I said, is being done at 10 rupees, 15 rupees, 20 rupees per kg of collection. I mean, paper is not collected at that price. Sorry, we're talking electronic waste here.
Right. Absolutely, Pranshu. So my last question for this webinar, post this we will close since we have already overshot our time limit. And it is for Dr. Chatterjee. It basically asks that some countries have mandated instruments and tools like material balances for producers as well as for recyclers, in terms of what goes in making a product and what comes out when it is waste. So what are your views, Dr. Chatterjee, on this? And can India move towards such a mechanism?
Mass balancing should be a robust software which can collect data from brand owners, of course, in the entire value chain, like PROs and from recyclers. One such concept initiated, of course, Pranshu was also there that 2 3 years back. So MOEF asked METI to develop software. CDAC, one of the premier institute under METI, developed that software, and it was handed over to the CPCB. Of course, because software can only work if the data point has been identified appropriately, SRS. So those things, he was not involved. Of course, CPCB and MODF, and maybe they took some meeting with the stakeholders like PRO recyclers. So they have. I am told that this software is already developed and they are just will launch within a month or two. Okay, this should be the like if you see 2011 we have a rule, now 16 we have a better rule. At least let them come out with some software system to capture the data. It can improve further. So in India also, of course, we'll be having some sort of data collection with the process of channelizing of the material and products, and what are the materials we can just track on online mode. So I think this year they will come to 2021. I think CPCB will launch that smart edition.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Chatterjee. And on that note, I would like to close the question and answer session because we've already overshot time. I request Atin to please give the thank you note, and then we may close.
Yeah, thanks, Siddharth. And just because of the want of time, we have to close it. It's because we are planned to close it at 3:30. We have exceeded by about 10 minutes. And my apologies to the participants whose questions could not be answered. But I assure you, since we have all your email IDs and phone numbers, we will screen the questions and we will reach out to the relevant panelists who are part of today's discussion for the questions that we need them to answer, and we'll definitely get back to you. It was truly a fascinating discussion that we had today, facilitated by our esteemed panelist and Siddharth. A lot of takeaways basically to push the agenda for more efficient e-waste management system, especially with reference to the presentation by Pranshu. And I have also taken note of few very important points that he has made. We'll definitely work on them to add more value to the report and to make it far more comprehensive. I would like to take the opportunity to thank all the panelists for their time and sharing the wealth of their experience with all of us. I also thank our entire team, the Municipal Solid Waste team, for producing the report. And I also thank all the participants who have joined us on the WebEx platform, as well as on various social media platforms where it has been streamed live. And we would definitely look forward to have your comments, suggestion, and feedback on our report. I have left mine and Siddharth's email ID, so you can write to us for anything that you want to comment or suggest on the report, so that we can take it into consideration when we revise it further. And before we end, just a quick word of caution. So COVID is very much with us, and it is still showing signs of coming back with new strains. So we need to be very, very careful. I urge all of you to continue to take precautions and until we receive a specific advisory from the government. On that note, I look forward to connect with all of you in our next event. Till then, it's goodbye from all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pranshu ji. Thank you.